After beating MVL and Topalov in classical chess and Wang Hao in Armageddon, Vishy Anand now took on Wesley So in the fourth round of the Norway Chess. He played two games. There was a classical game as well as the Armageddon game. So let's first have a look at the classical game. Vishy playing with the black pieces here. Wesley goes c4, c5, knight c3, knight c6, g3, g6, bishop g2, bishop g7, and in the classical game, Wesley played knight to f3. Later on in the Armageddon game, as we will see, he went d3. So knight f3 here, e6 by Anand, and now he played a pawn sacrifice that is very topical. He went d4. Now there are two ways to take this pawn. One is directly with the pawn, the other with the knight. If you take with the pawn here, then the best move is knight to b5. Threatening here, and perhaps the safest way for black to fight for equality is d5, takes, and now you can go for the sharp line starting with queen a5, but also ed5 is very much playable. Vishy actually took with the knight, and after knight takes, pawn takes. If now knight b5, there is queen b6 possibilities in the position. So knight e4 was played, d5, queen a4 check, king f8. This has been played before, but not by any 2700 plus player. Queen a3, Vishy goes queen e7. Now the knight settled in on d6. If you notice, black is a pawn up, but the black king has lost castling rights, and also the knight on d6 is very strong. But look at how Vishy plays this. First, he goes bishop e5. He hits the knight here. So the knight is defended by the pawn. And now he plays his king to g7. So his king is now safe, and he wants to then develop his knight. Castles. And now comes the interesting move, knight to h6. You may want to play knight f6, but after f4, somehow your bishop does not have squares. So knight h6, the idea is that if your opponent plays f4, then you can drop your bishop back to f6. And now Wesley plays a very interesting move, e4. So here's your chance to think, pause the video and try to figure out what is the best way for black to continue here. Not easy, but try to think. Okay, if you were to play en passant, that would not be a good idea, because after queen e3, I am attacking your knight and also the bishop. And this is lost. Let's say knight g4, I go queen e2, white is winning. So en passant is out of question. In the game, Anand played d takes e4, but that was also not a good solution because white after knight e4 is better. We will try to look at what happened in the game. The best move here, and very, very difficult to play it over the board, is rook d8. And you might think, what is happening? How can black allow white to open up the position? But here's the point. Black is intending something very specific. Black to play, what do you do? Excellent. Rook takes d6 is the move. And after c takes d6, bishop d6, I hit the queen. And after queen d3, I keep the position closed. And this is good compensation for black for an exchange. So this is how rook d8 was the most accurate move. But Vishy took knight takes. And now, if you were to play rook d8, which he wants to play, you know, the rook is very well placed behind the pawn. What is the problem here? White to move. The move that would create big difficulties is bishop g5. And after f6, which is forced, what does white do now? Important move. Yes, the only move. And f4. And actually, after something like takes and takes, white is winning. You will see that once the files get opened up, white has a crushing position here. So f6 was played. That was a good move by Vishy. And now Wesley should have played b4, because his idea is to start pushing his queenside pawns, b5, bd2, rook b1, rook c1. Just put power behind these pawns, and he has good compensation. Black central pawns are not going anywhere. But he went, instead of b4, he went f4, and this allowed Anand to play his bishop back, knight d6, and now a very good move from Vishy, rook d8. Also possible was knight f5, just challenging the knight on d6. So he went rook d8, knight b5 was the best, because if you take the pawn here, then after rook b8, black has got everything. He's freed up, his pawn is very strong on d4, and he is much, much better here. So rook d8, knight b5, queen d7 by Vishy, hitting the knight. Knight takes c7, queen takes c7, and now bishop to d2 was played. And threat is now bishop a5 to win material here. So black goes a5, c6. Very interesting move by Wesley. He could have gone b4, and I think this would have been around even, this position. But Wesley was in an aggressive mood. He played c6, which he took. Now he's 2 pawns up. But rook c1, putting pressure on the c6 pawn. The rook comes up to a6. Rook c5, putting pressure on the a5 pawn. The pawn has to move forward. Rook here, bishop d7, good move. And now bishop f1, hitting the rook. The rook went back, bishop g2. And this is where Vishy decided to call it a day by repeating the moves. And this was actually a bit surprising, because in this position, after bishop g2, instead of rook a6, he can play 2 moves, which are very nice. Because giving up this pawn can lead to freeing up of this bad bishop, and you'll still be a pawn up. So rook d7 is one move that I thought is very cool, because after takes, something like queen b7, black is doing very well. In fact, black would have almost a huge advantage here. The other move which is very cool is d3, and after you take, there is this small check which allows black to coordinate himself. Let's say king f1, and now I go rook d7, very important move, and black is once again excellently placed with knight f5. So Anand could have actually pushed on for a win here, but he decided to draw the game. And so we went to the Armageddon. Now in the Armageddon, which is the format of this tournament, if it's a draw, you go to the Armageddon. The side which had white will get the white pieces in Armageddon as well. 10 minutes, black has 7 minutes. If it is a draw, black wins. Basically, you're fighting for extra half point. Both have now got 1 point in the game. So Wesley goes c4, and actually opening wise, things worked out beautifully for Vishy. e6, e4, knight e7, knight e2, castles, b6, a3, d6, knight d4, b4, knight c6, all pretty standard. And now bishop b7 would have been a very cool move, but he went bishop d7, queen d2, knight takes, knight d4. Wesley took bishop h6. Now Anand played e5, take, and f4 was played. Maybe important was b5 here, and white would have a small edge, but f4, f6, h4, and now Vishy struck on the queen side with b5. Excellent play. Rook c1, takes, rook takes, bishop b5, and now you will see that white's attack is not going to succeed on the king side because of the open c file. Black is going to cause him constant worries there. Anand was very brave. He took the pawn, bishop f3, queen d7. He said to himself that actually it's me who will infiltrate now. So queen h2, stopping that. Rook takes, and rook c8. So there's no time. If you take here, and take on h5, then already the queen will enter in the position and could get very nasty. So rook f1 was played, rook c3, bishop e2, bishop b5, queen takes h5, and now Vishy took, and he was pretty sure that nothing is happening to his king. Fe5 was played, and now it's your move to think what would you do here as black to play. So there is one winning move and rest everything loses. Unfortunately, Vishy couldn't find that winning move. He played d takes e5 in the game, which is a mistake because of, can you pause the video and figure out how should white win this position? Queen f3, and there is a double attack here and here. The game is over. This would have similarly happened if f takes e5 was also played. Here there is queen g5 and game is already over with rook f8 coming in. So both of them were lost, but the right move was bishop e2. And I think Vishy clearly understood that if queen e2, then after let's say something, even taking on back on e5, but rook g3, it's just winning for black. But he would have been afraid of e takes f6. And now, once again, what do you play as black? Yes, the only move now is king h8. If you play king f8 in the position, then queen h6 and f7 wins. And basically, if you play king g8, then there is f7 and that also wins. So you have to play king h8. And now the tricky move is f7, because if you take the queen, I am making a queen and mating you. So what should black play here? Again, the only move rook g3. And the very nice thing is, with a check, I am looking at the g8 square now. And next move, I'm going to take your queen regardless of where your king goes. So if king h2, I take queen, rook g8 and wins. And if king f2, again takes rook g8 and wins. So Vishy would have won this game had he spotted this. It was possible for him. He had some time, but he played a bit too quickly here. And that's why he lost after queen f3. He lost a piece, and Wesley converted this pretty well. Bishop c4 was a nice tactical shot where the queens got traded. And then he just brought his king in, and then he changed his bishop's path. He wants to come bring it here, and Anand resigned here. Wesley So won. So this was a little bit of a heartbreak for Vishy because he was very close in both the games. And with this, these are the standings of the tournament. Anand on 8.5 still leading along with Magnus. Wesley So on 7.5, Mamediaro on 7, MVL 5.5, Anish Giri 4, Topalov 3.5. Rajabov, Wang Hao and Aryan Tari on 3. Today is a rest day on 4th of June. But on 5th of June, we will see the big mega clash between Vishy Anand and Magnus Carlsen. I'm very excited. Let me know in the comment section, who do you think will come out on top? For now, this is Sagar Shah signing off. Bye bye.